The evening sky had turned a deep purple as Barrett Thompson headed home after a long day. The 20-year-old drove carefully, his old blue sedan humming along the quiet streets of Westfield. He had the windows down, letting the cool spring air rush through his dark hair as he tapped his fingers against the steering wheel to the beat of a song on the radio. Barrett wasn't in any rush. The day had been productive, and he was feeling good about himself. He'd spent most of his afternoon at the community center, helping organize donations for families who had lost their homes in the recent floods. It wasn't how most young men his age spent their weekends, but Barrett wasn't most young men. Being the son of Robert Thompson, one of the wealthiest businessmen in the state, meant he was raised with certain expectations. His father had always emphasized the importance of giving back. With privilege comes responsibility, his dad would say, though Barrett sometimes wondered if his father followed his own advice. The older Thompson was often too busy making deals to show up at the charity events he funded. Barrett glanced at his phone as it buzzed with a text from his mom asking when he'd be home. He considered answering but decided against it while driving. That's when he noticed the flashing lights in his rearview mirror. "You've got to be kidding me," Barrett muttered, pulling over to the side of the road. He wasn't speeding, he was sure of it. His registration was up to date, and he hadn't run any red lights. What could this be about? Barrett watched as a police officer stepped out of the patrol car. In the growing darkness, all he could make out was a tall figure approaching with measured steps. Barrett rolled his window down completely and turned the radio off. His heart beat a little faster despite knowing he had done nothing wrong. These days, any interaction with police made people nervous, especially when you were young. "Good evening, sir," the officer said, shining a flashlight briefly into the car before lowering it. Officer Rivera, according to his name tag, looked to be in his mid-30s with short black hair and tired eyes. "License and registration, please." "Sure thing, officer," Barrett said, reaching slowly for his wallet and then the glove compartment. He handed over the documents. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" Officer Rivera examined the license and registration before answering. "Your left taillight is out, did you know that?" Barrett frowned. "No, I had no idea. I'll get it fixed right away." The officer nodded but didn't immediately hand back the documents. Instead, he shined his flashlight around the interior of the car. Barrett noticed the officer's attention linger on the back seat, which was filled with boxes and bags. "What's all that in the back?" Officer Rivera asked, his tone casual but his eyes alert. "Just some donations for the flood victims," Barrett explained. "Clothes, canned food, some toys for the kids. I volunteer at the Westfield Community Center." Officer Rivera's expression didn't change. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle, please." "Did I do something wrong?" Barrett asked, confusion clear in his voice. "Just a routine check," the officer replied. "Please step out of the car." Barrett unbuckled his seatbelt and slowly got out. The night air felt colder now, or maybe it was just his nerves. Across the street, a few people had gathered on the sidewalk, watching the scene unfold. Among them, a woman had her phone out, pointed directly at Barrett and the officer. "Is she recording this?" Barrett thought but didn't say anything. "I'm going to need you to open your trunk," Officer Rivera said, handing back Barrett's license and registration. Barrett hesitated. "Can I ask why?" "We've had reports of people transporting stolen goods under the guise of charity donations," Officer Rivera explained. "Just cooperate and we'll have you on your way quickly if everything checks out." Barrett nodded, trying to stay calm. He walked to the back of his car, aware of the small crowd watching from across the street. The woman with the phone had moved closer, and now Barrett could see that she wasn't just recording, she was live streaming. A small red dot blinked on her screen, and she was narrating something quietly into her phone. Great, Barrett thought. Just what I need, to end up as some viral video. Barrett took out his keys and opened the trunk. Inside were more boxes neatly labeled: children's clothes, men's shirts, women's winter wear, and non-perishable food. Everything was organized. Just as the volunteer coordinator had taught him, Officer Rivera looked surprised. He picked up one of the smaller boxes and opened it, finding exactly what the label promised: canned goods and packaged foods, all unexpired and in good condition. You weren't kidding about the donations, Officer Rivera said, closing the box and placing it back in the trunk. No, sir, Barrett replied. Like I said, I volunteer at the community center. We're collecting for the families who lost everything in the floods last month. Officer Rivera nodded, seeming to reassess the young man in front of him. That's good work you're doing. Sorry for the inconvenience, but we have to check these things out. There's been a string of burglaries in the area, and sometimes people use charity as a cover. Barrett relaxed slightly. I understand. You're just doing your job. Across the street, the crowd had grown larger. The woman live streaming moved even closer, trying to capture the interaction without being too obvious. Her phone was raised high, and now Barrett could hear her voice clearly. Son of billionaire Robert Thompson being searched by police, what could they have found? Stay tuned. Barrett cringed. His father wasn't a billionaire, but he was well known enough that Barrett occasionally dealt with this kind of attention. Usually it came from people who either wanted something from his family or held a grudge against his father's business practices. Officer Rivera noticed the live streamer too. Is that woman a friend of yours? No, Barrett sighed. I've never seen her before. The officer frowned. She shouldn't be that close to a traffic stop. Wait here. As Officer Rivera approached the woman, she backed up, still filming. I have a right to record. This is public property. Yes, ma'am, you do have that right, Officer Rivera said calmly. But I need you to maintain a safe distance. While the officer spoke with the live streamer, Barrett took out his phone to check the time. It was getting late and his mother would be worried. That's when he noticed the notifications flooding in. People were tagging him in social media posts. Apparently, the live stream had already caught the attention of local gossip accounts. Barrett opened one of the links and saw himself from moments ago, standing beside his open trunk, while Officer Rivera searched through the boxes. The comments were already flowing in with people speculating wildly about why he was being stopped. Rich kid probably has drugs. Special treatment incoming in 3, 2, 1. His daddy will have that cop fired by morning. Barrett closed the app, feeling a mix of anger and embarrassment. He'd spent the day helping others, and now he was being painted as some entitled rich kid trying to get away with something. Officer Rivera returned, looking annoyed. Sorry about that, she's agreed to keep her distance. He gestured to the trunk. You can close it up now, everything looks in order. Barrett shut the trunk, eager to be on his way. Am I free to go? Almost, Officer Rivera said. I still need to write you a warning for that taillight. Get it fixed as soon as possible. Barrett nodded, relieved it was just a warning. As Officer Rivera wrote up the notice, Barrett couldn't help but glance at the live streamer, who was still recording from a distance. How many people were watching? What were they saying about him? About the officer? Here you go, Officer Rivera said, handing Barrett the warning notice. And listen, I think what you're doing with those donations is great. Not many young people take the time to help others like that. The sincerity in the officer's voice caught Barrett off guard. Thanks. It's not a big deal, really. These families lost everything. The least I can do is help collect some essentials. Officer, Rivera smiled slightly. Well, the world could use more of that attitude. Drive safely and don't forget about that taillight. Barrett got back into his car, feeling better despite the unwanted attention from the live stream. As he pulled away from the curb, he saw the woman with the phone finally lowering it, perhaps disappointed that the interaction had ended so anticlimactically. What Barrett didn't know was that the live stream had already been viewed by thousands of people. By morning, clips would be edited, headlines would be crafted, and a simple traffic stop would be transformed into something it never was. His quiet act of charity was about to thrust him into a spotlight he never wanted, all because someone decided his private moment with law enforcement deserved a public audience. But for now, Barrett just wanted to get home, tell his mom about his day at the community center, and forget about the uncomfortable feeling of being watched by strangers. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Barrett woke up the next morning to his phone buzzing nonstop. At first, he tried to ignore it, burying his face deeper into his pillow. But after 5 minutes of constant notifications, he gave in and reached for the device. "What the?" he mumbled, squinting at the screen. There were dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text messages, and more social media notifications than he could count. Many were from numbers and accounts he didn't recognize. He sat up in bed, now fully awake. The memory of last night's traffic stop and the woman filming it came rushing back. Barrett opened his social media app and immediately wished he hadn't. The livestream video had gone viral overnight, but not in the way anyone might have expected. The headline attached to the most shared clip read, "Billionaire's son caught smuggling goods, police let him go." That's not what happened at all. Barrett said out loud to his empty room. He watched the clip with growing horror. It had been edited to show only Officer Rivera looking through the boxes in his trunk, followed by a short conversation where the officer let him go with just a warning. The part where the officer confirmed the boxes contained donations was conveniently cut out. The video had over 200,000 views already. Barrett's phone rang again. This time it was his father. "Have you seen the news?" Robert Thompson asked without preamble when Barrett answered. "I just woke up to it," Barrett replied, rubbing his eyes. "Dad, it's not what it looks like. I know what you were doing," his father interrupted. "Your mother told me about your volunteer work, but that's not how it's being portrayed. The company's PR team is already getting calls from reporters. I need you to lay low. Today while we handle this." Barrett felt a surge of anger. "Lay low? I didn't do anything wrong. I was helping people." "I know that," his father said, his voice softening slightly. "But perception matters, especially when our family name is involved. Trust me on this, Barrett. Stay home today. We'll sort it out." After hanging up, Barrett scrolled through more comments on the video. Some people were already speculating about what was really in the boxes. Others claimed the police officer had been paid off. A few even suggested that Barrett's father had called the police chief to ensure his son wouldn't get in trouble. It was all ridiculous, but the comments kept coming. Barrett threw his phone down on the bed and headed for the shower. As the hot water ran over him, he tried to make sense of how a simple traffic stop had turned into this mess. Just as he was getting dressed, his phone rang again. This time it was Lily, the volunteer coordinator from the community center. "Barrett, are you okay?" she asked when he picked up. "I just saw that video online." "I'm fine," he said, grateful for her concern. "But it's all been twisted around. Those were the donations we collected yesterday. The officer was just doing his job, and then he let me go with a warning about my taillight." "I know," Lily said. "That's why I'm calling. The community center is getting flooded with calls and messages. Some people are questioning our integrity, saying we're involved in something shady. Others are suddenly interested in donating. It's chaos." Barrett sat down heavily on the edge of his bed. "I'm so sorry, Lily. This is all because of me." "Don't apologize," she said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, I was hoping you might come down to the center today. We're planning to do a short video showing exactly what was in those boxes and how they're being distributed to the flood victims. It might help set the record straight." Barrett hesitated, remembering his father's advice to lay low. But staying hidden would only make him look guilty of something, and the community center was suffering because of this misunderstanding. "I'll be there in an hour," he decided. When Barrett arrived at the Westfield Community Center, he was surprised to find the parking lot full. Inside, volunteers were busily sorting through new donations that had arrived that morning. Lily met him at the door, looking both exhausted and excited. "You won't believe what's happened," she said, leading him through the bustling main hall. "After that video went viral, we've received 3 times our usual donations. Apparently, not everyone believed the negative spin. Some people wanted to see for themselves what we're doing here." Barrett looked around in amazement. There were at least twice as many volunteers as usual, many of whom he'd never seen before. "That's unexpected," he said, feeling a small glimmer of hope that something good might come from this situation after all. Lily nodded. "That's not all. A local news station called. They want to do a story on our flood relief efforts. I told them you'd be here." Barrett's stomach tightened. Lily, I don't know if that's a good idea. My father thinks I should stay out of the spotlight. Until this blows over. With all due respect to your father, Lily said, lowering her voice, hiding won't fix this. The story is already out there, but it's the wrong story. This is your chance to tell the right one. Before Barrett could respond, the community center's door opened and Officer Rivera walked in. He wasn't in uniform, instead wearing jeans and a simple gray t-shirt. He looked uncomfortable as heads turned toward him. Barrett walked over to greet him. Officer Rivera, I didn't expect to see you here. The officer shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Call me Diego when I'm off duty. And yeah, I didn't exactly plan on coming here, but after seeing that video, he shook his head. I wanted to make sure you were okay. That wasn't right how they edited that footage. Barrett was touched by the officer's concern. I'm fine. Well, as fine as you can be when hundreds of thousands of people think you're some entitled rich kid getting away with something illegal. Diego managed a small smile. For what it's worth, I've been getting my share of hate too. Apparently, I'm corrupt and took a bribe to let you go. I'm sorry about that, Barrett said sincerely. You were just doing your job. That's policing. These days, Diego shrugged. Everyone's got a camera and everyone's got an opinion. But listen, the reason I came by, my sergeant suggested I might want to set the record straight too. That reporter outside, they're hoping to talk to both of us. Barrett looked toward the door where a woman with a microphone and a cameraman were waiting patiently. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably his father again, warning him to stay out of sight. You know what? Barrett said, making up his mind. Let's do it. Let's show everyone what was really in those boxes. Together, Barrett and Diego walked outside to meet the reporter. Lily joined them, bringing one of the boxes from last night's donations. We're here with Barrett Thompson and Officer Diego Rivera, the reporter began. The two men at the center of a viral video that sparked controversy overnight. Barrett, can you tell us what was really happening in that video? Barrett took a deep breath. I volunteer here at the Westfield Community Center. Yesterday I was transporting boxes of donations for families affected by the recent floods. Officer Rivera pulled me over for a broken tail light, and as part of routine procedure, he asked to check my trunk. Diego nodded. We've had reports of stolen goods being moved through the area, so I was following protocol. What I found were exactly what Mr. Thompson claimed: boxes of clothing, food, and supplies for flood victims. The reporter turned to Lily. And you can confirm these donations? Lily opened the box she was holding, revealing neatly folded children's clothes. These are some of the items Barrett collected. Today, they'll go to families who lost everything when their homes were flooded. Barrett has been one of our most dedicated volunteers, despite what that viral video suggests. As they continued the interview, more people gathered to watch. Barrett noticed the woman from last night, the one who had live-streamed the traffic stop, standing at the edge of the crowd, her phone out again. But this time, instead of feeling angry, Barrett felt a strange sense of gratitude. If she hadn't filmed that moment, none of these new donations would have arrived. When the interview ended, Barrett expected to feel relief. Instead, his phone buzzed with a text from his father. What part of lay low wasn't clear? Come home now, we need to talk. Barrett slipped his phone back into his pocket without replying. He helped Lily carry boxes to the distribution area, where families were already waiting. A small girl, no more than 6 years old, smiled shyly at him as her mother received a box of clothing that included a pink winter coat. Thank you, the mother said, tears in her eyes. We lost everything in the flood. You're welcome, Barrett replied, suddenly feeling that all the social media chaos didn't matter at all compared to this moment. As he walked back to get more boxes, Diego approached him again. That went well, I think, though I'm guessing from your face that not everyone is happy about our little TV appearance. Barrett sighed. My father believes in handling things quietly behind the scenes. He's not going to be thrilled. Diego nodded, understandingly. Parents want to protect their kids, can't blame him for that. But sometimes standing up for the truth is more important than avoiding the spotlight. As Barrett looked around at all the new volunteers, the donations, and the families receiving help, he knew Diego was right. The truth was already having its impact, spreading in its own way, just like the false story had. What Barrett didn't realize yet was that this was just the beginning. The interview would spark its own viral moment, creating a new narrative that would reach even further than the original video. And somewhere in that digital storm, something unexpected was about to happen, something that would change Barrett's life in ways he couldn't imagine. The Thompson family dinner that night was tense, to say the least. Barrett sat across from his father at their long dining table, pushing food around his plate while avoiding eye contact. His mother, Ellen, attempted to fill the silence with comments about the garden and the weather, but her efforts only highlighted the unspoken conflict. Finally, Robert Thompson set down his fork with a soft clink that somehow echoed through the room. "The company's PR team spent all day handling calls about that video," he said, his voice controlled but tight. "Our stock dropped 3 points. Barrett looked up. "Because of a traffic stop? That's ridiculous." "Because people love a scandal," his father replied. "And they especially love when someone with money appears to be getting away with something. Perception is reality in today's world, Barrett." "But the interview today set the record straight," Barrett argued. "The community center got more donations because of it. Some good came out of this mess." Robert shook his head. "You're missing the point. By going on camera, you validated the story. You made it bigger. Now instead of a viral video that would have been forgotten in a day or two, we have news outlets picking it up." Ellen reached over and placed her hand on her husband's arm. "Robert, Barrett was just trying to help those flood victims. His heart was in the right place." "I know that," Robert said, his expression softening slightly as he looked at his wife. Then he turned back to Barrett. "But there are better ways to help, ways that don't put our family name in jeopardy." Barrett felt his temper rising. "So that's what this is really about, the precious Thompson name, not the fact that I was actually doing something good?" "Barrett," his mother warned quietly. "No, Mom," Barrett continued, pushing his plate away. "Dad's upset because I didn't follow his playbook. Write a check, get your name on a building, but don't actually get your hands dirty helping real people." Robert's face hardened. "That's not fair. My company employs thousands of people. We donate millions to charity every year." "Yeah, when it makes for good PR," Barrett shot back. "But when's the last time you actually met the people you're supposedly helping?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Barrett immediately regretted his words. His father worked incredibly hard, and Barrett knew the man wasn't as cold as he sometimes appeared. But there was truth in what he'd said too. "I'm sorry," Barrett said finally. "That was out of line." Robert took a deep breath. "No, there's some truth to it. I haven't been as hands-on with our charitable work as I could be. But that doesn't change the fact that you need to be more careful. The spotlight can be dangerous, Barrett. I've learned that the hard way." Before Barrett could respond, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Then his father's phone chimed too. They both reached for their devices. "You've got to be kidding me," Barrett muttered, staring at the screen. The woman who had filmed the original live stream had posted a follow-up video. In it, she claimed that the interview with Barrett and Officer Rivera was staged damage control, orchestrated by the Thompson family's powerful connections. She was calling for people to dig deeper into what was really going on. Robert's expression darkened as he read the same story. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Give these stories oxygen, and they only grow bigger." Barrett's phone buzzed, again with a text from Lily. "Have you seen the new video? People are starting to question our donations now. Some are even saying we should be investigated." "This is crazy," Barrett said, showing his parents the text. "The community center doesn't deserve this." Ellen looked concerned. "Maybe your father is right, honey. Maybe it's best to step back for a while and let this die down." Barrett stood up from the table. "I can't do that, Mom. These people need help, and now they're being accused of something shady because of me. I need to fix this." "Barrett," his father started. "Dad, I know you're trying to protect me and the family name, but running away from this will only make it worse." I have to face it head on. Robert studied his son for a long moment. Then to Barrett's surprise, he nodded slowly. All right, but this time, we do it my way. Strategic, not reactive. The next morning, Barrett met his father at Robert's downtown office. The Thompson building stood 40 stories high, a testament to his father's business success. Barrett had rarely visited his father at work, and he felt out of place among the suits and clicking heels. Robert led him into a conference room where 4 people were waiting: the company's head of PR, their legal counsel, a social media expert, and, surprisingly, Officer Diego Rivera. Officer Rivera, Barrett said, extending his hand. I didn't expect to see you here. Diego shook his hand firmly. Your father called me this morning, said we needed a unified approach to handle this situation. Barrett glanced at his father, impressed despite himself. Robert Thompson was nothing if not thorough. Let's get started, Robert said, taking a seat at the head of the table. Karen, bring us up to speed on the current situation. The PR head, a sharp-looking woman with short gray hair, tapped her tablet. The original video has over 500,000 views now. The follow-up accusations have about 100,000. The interview you and Officer Rivera gave has been picked up by 3 local stations and 1 national news site. She continued. The narrative is splitting. Some people believe Barrett is getting special treatment because of his family name. Others are rallying behind the community center, seeing it as unfairly targeted. The woman who posted the videos, Tina Bell, has a history of posting controversial content for views. She's monetized her channels and is clearly benefiting from the attention. So she's just doing this for money? Barrett asked, disgusted. Partially, Karen replied. But she also seems to have a particular interest in your family, Barrett. She's posted about your father's company several times before, usually with negative slants about wealth inequality. Robert leaned forward. What's our exposure here, legally speaking? The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Minimal. Nothing illegal has occurred. The videos are misleading but fall under protected speech. We could pursue a defamation case, but I wouldn't recommend it. That would only add fuel to the fire. I agree, the social media expert chimed in. Fighting this directly will only amplify it. We need a different approach. What about the community center? Barrett asked. They're the real victims here. Diego nodded. He's right. I've been hearing chatter that some people are planning to protest outside the center today. These are families who desperately need help, and now they might be too afraid to go there. Robert thought for a moment, then looked at his son. Barrett, this started because you were doing something good. Maybe that's how we end it too. What do you mean? Barrett asked. Transparency, Robert replied. Complete and total transparency. We invite the media to the community center, show them everything, the donations, the distribution process, the families being helped. We don't hide anything. The PR head looked concerned. That's risky, Robert. We can't control the narrative in that environment. Maybe we don't need to control it, Barrett said, beginning to understand his father's thinking. Maybe we just need to show the truth, all of it, and let people decide for themselves. Robert nodded. Exactly. And I'll be there too. Barrett stared at his father in surprise. You will? Yes, Robert said firmly. It's time I got my hands dirty, as you put it. 3 hours later, Barrett stood beside his father outside the Westfield Community Center. A small crowd of protesters had gathered, holding signs with messages like, "No special treatment and investigate the donations." On the other side of the parking lot, 3 news vans had set up cameras. Lily met them at the door, looking stressed, but determined. Thank you for coming, Mr. Thompson. I never expected all this attention. Please call me Robert, Barrett's father said, shaking her hand. And don't worry. By the end of today, everyone will know exactly what good work you're doing here. As they prepared to address the media, Barrett noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Tina Bell, the woman who had started all this with her live stream, was pushing her way to the front, phone held high to record. She's here, Barrett murmured to his father. Robert followed his gaze and nodded. Good. I was hoping she would be. You were? Yes. Robert said with a slight smile. Because what I'm about to do isn't just for the cameras. Before Barrett could ask what his father meant, Robert stepped up to the microphones that had been set up. The cameras focused on him, and the crowd quieted. My name is Robert Thompson, he began, his voice clear and confident. Many of you know me as a businessman. Today I'm here as a father. My son Barrett was stopped by police 2 nights ago while transporting donations for flood victims. That moment was filmed, edited, and shared in a way that cast doubt on both my son's actions and the integrity of this community center. He paused, looking directly at where Tina Bell stood filming. To those who have questions, I say this. Ask them. Today we are opening every door, every box, every record of this community center for full inspection. Nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Barrett watched his father with growing admiration. This was a side of Robert Thompson he rarely saw. Not the calculating businessman, but a man of principle standing up for what was right. As Robert continued his speech, Barrett noticed Diego arrive in his police uniform. He was accompanied by his sergeant and 2 other officers. The crowd murmured as the police approached, but instead of confrontation, Diego carried a large box of donations from the trunk of his cruiser. Something was shifting in the atmosphere. The protest signs seemed to lower slightly. The aggressive energy was beginning to dissipate. And as Barrett looked around, he realized that more people were arriving, not to protest, but to bring donations of their own. The truth was finally starting to emerge, but Barrett knew that the story was far from over. Tina Bell was still recording, her expression unreadable. The media was capturing every moment. And somewhere in that crowd were people who still believed the worst. The real test was just beginning. The community center buzzed with activity as reporters wandered through, filming volunteers sorting donations and interviewing flood victims about the help they'd received. Robert Thompson moved through the crowd with surprising ease for a man who usually operated in boardrooms. He spoke to everyone, volunteers, families, even the protesters who had cautiously come inside to see for themselves. Barrett watched his father with a mixture of pride and amazement. This was a side of Robert Thompson that the public rarely saw, and honestly, that Barrett himself had almost forgotten existed. Your dad's a natural, Lily said, appearing beside Barrett with a clipboard in hand. He just convinced 3 corporate sponsors to double their donations. Barrett smiled. Yeah, he can be pretty persuasive when he wants to be. They stood in silence for a moment, watching as Robert knelt down to speak with a young boy who was clutching a new stuffed bear from the donations. I never thought this would happen, Lily admitted quietly. When you first started volunteering here, I figured you were just another rich kid padding his college application. Barrett raised an eyebrow. And now? Lily laughed. Now I know better. You actually care. And apparently, so does your father. Before Barrett could respond, Diego approached them looking concerned. We might have a problem, the officer said in a low voice. That woman, Tina Bell, she's outside arguing with my sergeant. She's claiming we're not showing the real operation, whatever that means. Barrett felt a flare of anger. What more does she want? We've opened everything up. Some people don't want the truth, Lily said. They want their version of it. Diego nodded. She's drawing a crowd again, and she knows exactly what she's doing, performing for her viewers. Barrett looked across the room at his father, who was now speaking with a reporter. Robert caught his son's eye and, noticing his expression, excused himself and walked over. What's wrong? Robert asked. Diego explained the situation and Robert's face hardened slightly. Where is she? Dad? Maybe we should just ignore her, Barrett suggested. She wants attention. No, Robert said firmly. Running from problems isn't the Thompson way. Let's go talk to her. The 4 of them walked outside to find Tina Bell standing near the entrance. Her phone held high as she addressed her live stream audience. Still won't let us see the shipping records, she was saying. What are they hiding about where these so-called donations are really going? Ms. Bell, Robert called out, approaching her with confident strides. I understand you have questions about our operation here. Tina turned, clearly surprised to be addressed directly by Robert Thompson. Her live stream now captured them face to face. "Mr. Thompson," she recovered quickly. "Yes, I do have questions. Your sudden involvement seems convenient. Where were you before this became a PR issue for your company?" Robert didn't flinch. "That's a fair question. The honest answer is that I was where too many people in my position are, writing checks but staying distant from the actual work. My son taught me that's not enough." Tina looked skeptical. "And we're supposed to believe this conversion happened overnight?" "No," Robert replied calmly. "This isn't about me having some magical transformation. It's about recognizing where I've fallen short and trying to do better. Now I understand you want to see shipping records?" Tina seemed momentarily thrown off by his directness. "Yes, to verify where the donations are actually going." "Then let's go look at them together," Robert said. "Right now, on your live stream, every receipt, every delivery record, everything." Barrett watched in amazement as his father essentially invited Tina to audit their entire operation on her live stream. It was either brilliant or crazy, maybe both. Tina narrowed her eyes, clearly, trying to decide if this was some kind of trap. "Fine," she said finally. "Let's see them." What followed was perhaps the most boring live stream in history. A detailed examination of paperwork, shipping manifests, and donation receipts. Robert methodically walked Tina through every document, explaining each step of the process from donation to distribution. Diego occasionally added context about how the police department coordinated with the center during the emergency response to the floods. Viewers began dropping off. Even Tina seemed to be losing interest as it became increasingly clear that there was no scandal to uncover. "And these are the families who received donations yesterday," Lily said, showing a sign-in sheet with names and addresses. "You can blur that for privacy, but as you can see, these are all from the affected flood zones." Tina scrolled through the comments on her live stream. Her viewers were getting restless, asking where the promised scandal was. "What about the boxes in his trunk that night?" she asked, making one last attempt. "How do we know what was really in them? Why don't we ask the families who received those specific donations?" Robert suggested. He motioned to a volunteer who brought over a woman and her daughter, the same ones Barrett had helped the day before. "Ma'am, would you mind telling Ms. Bell about the winter coat your daughter received?" The woman, looking somewhat nervous in front of the camera, nodded. "Yes, my daughter got a pink coat yesterday. It was in one of the boxes delivered by him." She pointed at Barrett. "We lost everything in the flood, including all our winter clothes. The coat fits her perfectly." The little girl, seemingly oblivious to the tension, twirled in her pink coat. "It's so warm," she said happily. "And it has pockets for my treasures." Something shifted in Tina's expression as she watched the little girl. For just a moment, the hardness in her eyes softened. "Thank you," Robert said to the mother and daughter. Then he turned back to Tina. "Any other questions, Ms. Bell?" Tina lowered her phone slightly. "Why is someone like you suddenly getting involved in this small community center? What's your angle?" Robert considered the question. 25 years ago, before I built my company, my family lost everything in a house fire. We had no insurance. A community center much like this one helped us get back on our feet. I promised myself I'd give back when I could. Over the years, I've donated money, but I stopped giving my time and personal attention. My son reminded me of that promise I made." Barrett stared at his father. He'd heard about the fire, but he'd never known about the community center that helped them. It explained so much about his father's drive to succeed, to build security for his family. Tina seemed at a loss for words. Her live stream was still running, capturing this unexpectedly human moment from a man she'd portrayed as a cold corporate titan. She started, then paused. "That's not the story I expected." "The truth rarely is," Robert replied simply. Just then, Diego's radio crackled. He stepped away to answer it, then returned with a strange expression. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Dispatch just got a call. The floodwaters are rising again upstream. They're expecting another surge to hit the valley communities tonight." The mood shifted instantly. Lily immediately began directing volunteers to prepare emergency packages. Robert pulled out his phone and started making calls to arrange transportation. Tina stood watching them, her live stream still running but forgotten in her hand. "Are you just going to stand there filming?" Barrett asked her. "Or are you going to help?" For a moment he thought she might walk away. Instead, she ended her live stream with a quick, "I'll update you all later," and slipped her phone into her pocket. "What can I do?" she asked quietly. Over the next few hours, the community center transformed into an emergency response hub. Police officers, including Diego, coordinated with emergency services to identify which areas would be hit hardest. Volunteers assembled emergency kits with food, water, first aid supplies, and clean clothing. Robert Thompson was in his element, organizing transportation for evacuees and calling in favors from business contacts to secure additional supplies. Barrett worked alongside Lily, helping direct the growing number of volunteers who arrived after hearing about the new flood threat. And surprisingly, Tina Bell threw herself into the work as well. She used her social media reach to spread accurate information about evacuation zones and to call for additional volunteers and donations. The live streamer who had caused so much trouble was now using her platform for something constructive. As evening approached, the first reports of rising waters came in. The center began receiving families who had been evacuated from the lowest-lying areas. Barrett helped an elderly couple find seats in the rapidly filling main hall. "You remind me of your father," the old man said to Barrett's surprise. "Really?" Barrett couldn't hide his skepticism. "How so?" "The way you take charge but still listen," the man explained. "I knew Robert years ago before he became big business. He was always a good man who wanted to help. Somewhere along the way, I think he forgot that part of himself. Good to see he's found it again." Barrett looked across the room where his father was directing a group of volunteers. For the first time in years, Barrett felt like he truly recognized the man his father was, not just the successful businessman, but the person underneath. Diego approached, looking tired but focused. "We have more families coming in from the east side. The road might be underwater within the hour." "We'll be ready," Barrett assured him. As they worked side by side preparing for the coming crisis, Barrett realized something important. The viral video that had seemed like such a disaster had led to this moment, bringing together unlikely allies, reconnecting him with his father, and ultimately helping the community face a new challenge. Sometimes, being watched by the world wasn't such a bad thing after all. 2 weeks later, Barrett stood at the edge of what had once been a neighborhood. The floodwaters had receded, leaving behind mud-caked streets and damaged homes. Some houses were still standing, though badly in need of repair. Others had been washed away completely, leaving only foundations as evidence they had ever existed. He watched as volunteers in work gloves and boots cleared debris, hauled damaged furniture to the curb, and helped residents salvage what they could. The community center had shifted from emergency relief to recovery efforts, and Barrett had been here almost every day since the second flood hit. "Hard to believe this all started with a traffic stop," Diego said, walking up beside Barrett. The officer was off duty, dressed in jeans and a faded t-shirt, his hands calloused from days of volunteer work. Barrett nodded. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if that woman hadn't been filming that night." "Well, I'd still have written you a ticket for that taillight," Diego grinned. "Did you ever get it fixed, by the way?" "First thing the next morning," Barrett laughed. Then his expression grew more serious. "But honestly, without that video going viral, we might not have had this many people ready to help when the second flood came through." It was true. The controversy had inadvertently raised awareness about the community center and the flood victims. Donations had poured in from across the country. Volunteer numbers had tripled. And most surprisingly, many of the people who had initially believed the worst about Barrett and his family were now among the most dedicated helpers. "Speaking of your live streamer friend," Diego nodded toward a figure down the street. Tina Bell was directing a group of volunteers who were clearing mud from an elderly couple's home. Her phone was nowhere in sight. Instead of filming, she was fully engaged in the work, her clothes and face streaked with mud. "Still can't believe that turnaround," Barrett said, "from trying to tear us down to helping rebuild." "People can surprise you," Diego replied. Sometimes they just need to see the truth with their own eyes. Barrett's phone buzzed with a text from his father. Meeting at the community center in 30 minutes. Big announcement. Bring Diego if he's with you. Over the past 2 weeks, Robert Thompson had thrown himself into the relief efforts with unexpected passion. He'd leveraged his business connections to secure donations, equipment, and expertise for the rebuilding process. But more than that, he'd rolled up his sleeves and worked alongside everyone else, often staying later than Barrett himself. "My dad wants us at the center," Barrett told Diego. "Says he has some kind of announcement." When they arrived at the community center, the main hall was already filling with volunteers and residents. Lily waved them over to seats she'd saved near the front. Barrett noticed local news cameras setting up along one wall. "Any idea what this is about?" he asked Lily. She shook her head. "Your dad's been making calls all morning, but he's been pretty secretive about it." A few minutes later, Robert Thompson walked in, accompanied by the mayor and several people in business attire, whom Barrett recognized as executives from other companies in the region. His father looked tired but energized, the way he always did when he was excited about a new project. The mayor stepped up to the microphone first. "Thank you all for coming. These past weeks have tested our community like never before, but they've also shown the incredible resilience and generosity of our citizens. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Robert Thompson, who has an announcement that will help us move forward from this disaster." Robert took the microphone, scanning the crowd until he found Barrett. He gave his son a small nod before addressing the room. "2 weeks ago, many of you knew me only as a businessman," he began. "Some of you may have had certain ideas about who I was and what I cared about. I can't blame you for that. I'd lost touch with what really matters." He paused, and Barrett was surprised to see his father looking emotional. "My son reminded me of who I used to be and who I wanted to be, and then this community showed me what real strength and compassion look like. So today, I'm announcing the creation of the Westfield Rebuilding Initiative." Murmurs spread through the crowd as Robert continued. "This will be a 5-year program funded initially with $10 million from the Thompson Foundation, with matching contributions from the business partners you see here today. The initiative will not only rebuild homes destroyed in the flood, but also improve infrastructure to prevent future disasters." The crowd erupted in applause. Robert raised his hands to quiet them. "But this isn't just about money. It's about creating a new model for how communities recover from disasters. We'll be providing job training programs for residents who lost their livelihoods. We'll be rebuilding with sustainable materials and methods, and most importantly, we'll be doing it together as a community." Barrett felt a surge of pride watching his father. This wasn't a PR move or damage control. This was genuine commitment to making things better. "And," Robert added, "the initiative will be co-chaired by 2 people who have already demonstrated their dedication to this community. My son, Barrett Thompson, and Officer Diego Rivera." Barrett and Diego exchanged shocked glances. This was the first either of them had heard of this. Together with Lily Chen from the community center, they'll ensure that the initiative stays focused on the real needs of the people affected by the floods. After the announcement, there were questions from reporters, handshakes with officials, and excited conversations throughout the room. Barrett found himself surrounded by people congratulating him, asking about plans, offering suggestions. It was overwhelming. He finally managed to step outside for a moment of quiet. The evening air was cool and smelled of rain, though the skies were clear. Barrett took a deep breath, trying to process everything that had happened. The door opened behind him, and Tina Bell stepped out. They hadn't spoken directly since the night of the second flood. "Quite the turnaround story," she said, leaning against the wall beside him. "The rich guy finds his heart, the community comes together, everyone lives happily ever after." Barrett smiled slightly. "Is that how you're going to tell it on your channel?" Tina looked down. "About that. I owe you an apology. I jumped to conclusions based on my own biases. I edited that video to tell the story I wanted to tell, not what actually happened." "Why?" Barrett asked. It was the question he'd wanted to ask her for weeks. Tina was quiet for a moment. My family lost everything when I was a kid. Bank foreclosed. On our house, no one helped us, so when I see someone with money, someone like your dad, I assume the worst. Barrett nodded, understanding. And now? Now I see it's more complicated than that. People are more complicated. She pulled out her phone. I posted a full retraction this morning, told the whole story, including my part. In it. Already lost about half my followers. I'm sorry, Barrett said, surprised to find he meant it. Tina shrugged. Don't be. They weren't the kind of followers I want anyway. She hesitated, then added, I've been documenting the recovery work. The real story, no editing. Would you be willing to do an interview for it? You and your dad? Before Barrett could answer, the door opened again and Robert stepped out. There you are, his father said. Everyone's asking for you inside. He noticed Tina and his expression tightened slightly. Ms. Bell. Mr. Thompson, Tina replied. I was just asking Barrett if you both might consider an interview for my new documentary about the rebuilding efforts. Robert raised an eyebrow. A real documentary this time, no creative editing? No, sir, Tina said. Just the truth. The whole process, good and bad. People need to see what it really takes to rebuild after something like this. Robert and Barrett exchanged a look. Barrett gave a small nod. All right, Robert agreed. But on one condition. You don't just film us, you film everyone, the families, the volunteers, the workers. This isn't about the Thompsons, it's about the community. That's exactly what I was hoping for, Tina said, a genuine smile spreading across her face. As they walked back inside, Barrett felt a sense of closure. What had started as a simple traffic stop, complicated by someone filming at the wrong moment, had evolved into something none of them could have predicted. Diego met them at the door. Everything okay out there? Barrett nodded. Yeah. I think we're starting a new chapter. Later that evening, as Barrett drove home under a sky full of stars, he passed the spot where Officer Rivera had pulled him over that night. His taillight worked perfectly now, casting a steady red glow in the darkness. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Just saw Tina's new video. Over 100,000 views already. People are reaching out wanting to help. Barrett smiled. The camera that had once caused so much trouble was now helping heal a community. Sometimes being watched wasn't such a bad thing after all. Sometimes it was exactly what the world needed. To see people coming together, overcoming differences, and rebuilding not just homes but trust. As he pulled into his driveway, Barrett noticed his father sitting on the front porch steps. Robert looked up and waved, waiting for his son to join him. They had a lot of work ahead of them, a community to help rebuild and a relationship of their own to strengthen. Barrett switched off the engine and walked toward his father, grateful for second chances and unexpected journeys. The night was quiet except for the distant sound of frogs singing in the pond behind their house. No cameras, no audience, just father and son sitting together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and planning for tomorrow.